It was one of those beautiful blue island retreats, and I couldn't wait for us to land. The plane had only two travelers, myself, and a very attractive lady in the seat across the aisle. She was quiet and somewhat tense as I watched her grab both armrests in her seat. Her face was drawn and began to sweat big water drops on her clothes. She hadn't dressed for high temperatures in this area of the tropics. I offered her my extra napkins and she said, "Thank you," but quickly she passed out in the seat. I tried to get someone to help, but no one else was on the small plane but the pilot. At that moment the pilot bailed out of the plane. Flipped me the finger on his way out the door. We went into a spiral down to the water. This was the end. The woman and myself were covered in sweat. I asked if she was ready for a crash water landing. She was totally still, completely out. I could only hold onto her into the water if we didn't blaze out or blow up. I had no idea what to expect as we shook like a carnival car ride. I was ready to throw up, my stomach was sick. Something came out of my mouth on me and the woman. What a mess! I blacked out as neared the waves 20 feet high of constant waves. What do they usually say? Prepare for impact. I knew I was going to die. Ugh, my brain school. I peed my pants and I held up this passed out woman. And then we hit the waves, a hell of an impact, cold water, blood from me and the woman on both of us. And then darkness. She was getting waterlogged in her seat and mine was no better. At least we still lived as we tried to keep our heads above the water level as we started to float. No one else was alive. The pilot was dead in the cockpit and both of us were fighting drowning. We knew the tail end was up in the air, but we didn't know how much longer. If I could pull her out we could float in the water in our safety vests. I think you should get it on, I thought. So I caught it on the water floating in front of us, and I pulled it over her head, which was somewhat awake. I didn't know if it was or booze or injury. There was no blood, just our wet bodies getting heavier and heavier in the water. We needed to kick a window out or we're done unless we float. It did start to right its surface as we came out of the water. I yelled for help. I saw nobody. I thought, this is the end. Well, if this is the end, it's a mighty cold one in this damn cold water. If we could surface entirely we might get balance, but what do I know about airplanes? She started to wake up and yelled at her, and she came out of shock, so I said, you have to wake up if we can keep the cold blue water below our heads. Now remember that, please. She shook her head and kept it above water, as kicked at a forward window which might allow us to float out if it was big enough for me, but I couldn't leave her here. What could I do, I thought. Hours later we heard a plane landing on the water near us. I screamed at the window and saw the plane and stuck my hand out showing them we were alive. Thank God, they saw us and rescue was underway. What a life. When I kissed the rescue ship, all Navy women. Things were changing. The Navy had finally been able to get their organization cleaned up and allowed women to command ships, and by golly, they are now holding the reins. I was never so happy than to see a U.S. Navy ship commanded by a naval woman officer. They were as happy as we were. They were successful in getting some support on the plane to get the pilot off and hold above water to double-check the plane. We were so tired and thankful that we cried. Arriving back in Miami, it was wonderful to be on solid ground. Well, they do have a lot of water areas, but it's still solid, at least for the moment. The pilot did die in the crash, but the other passenger woman came back with me on the same flight. We agreed to remain in contact as we feel that we became blood brothers or something like that to hold this memory. And then it was back to work, and of course I worked for a company that built small airlines, and of course this plane that crashed was one of those. Yep, I'm going to be very busy with my favorite airline. Little do they know they come up for review on our line for no defects. Well, of course it could have been pilot problem, air mistakes, ship not given a no error review at the factory. Somewhere there is a missing bolt in that baby that we're going to find, and my boss will come along with me as we spend a lot of time together checking out the plane's remains and the shop servicing. Certainly, my manager will accompany me on the plane review once it comes to the show and dries out. Of course, my friend is also my boss, and she is the most beautiful woman on this earth. You think that matters? Well, she is perhaps one of the most beautiful women in the world and extremely intelligent. This is what we want in this company: a person knowledgeable to lead the company, fly the planes, outsource product design, keep employees happy, and make money. And don't forget me as part of her life.